Hey, what is going on, guys? Inferno LH here, and today I've got a brand new series which I'm going to be doing on my channel, and I'm going to be talking about Terraria's most underrated weapons. So I've created a list of a bunch of weapons that I'm going to cover within the next few videos or so, but if you got any extra weapons that you would like me to cover in these videos that you think are underrated, please comment them down below. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about various different types of weapons throughout the game, and I will be using the armors and gear setups that I'm going to be using for these weapons will be like an armor set that you can obtain while you get that weapon. As well as the bosses, they're going to be like bosses that you would typically fight when you obtain these weapons, just to make it a little more fair. But before we get right on into the first weapon, could you please like and subscribe to my channel? I would really appreciate it. I will also leave the link to my Discord server in the description of this video if you want to go ahead and join that. But let's get straight on into the first weapon. So the first weapon is the Ice Blade. This is a fairly underrated weapon that I never really see anyone use. You can obtain this very early on in the game through frozen chests underground, or boreal crates, or frozen crates from fishing. The Ice Blade can be obtained as soon as you start a playthrough, so it's really not a bad idea to go for this thing, because it's fairly strong, as even you can see against the Eye of Cthulhu, it does pretty decent against him. It does 7 base damage, so it's not that much. You can increase that with multiple different ways. But it also has a projectile that it shoots out. As you can see, it shoots like a little ice projectile, which comes in really handy, especially against bosses like this. This weapon is actually very similar to the Enchanted Sword, in my opinion, and I'm kind of surprised how little people use this weapon. Maybe some of you do, but it's fairly underrated. Me as a mainly melee player, I never really use this weapon. I usually never even really explore the underground snow biome, as I just explore the regular caverns, so that may be the main reason, but I'm surprised not more people use this weapon. It's pretty great. Our next weapon on the list is the Mushroom Spear. This is actually a pretty great spear, although I feel like the whole spear's weapon subtype is just never really used and kind of underrated in itself, but this spear is actually pretty great. The Mushroom Spear can be obtained as soon as you get into hard mode, I believe, and it is sold by the Truffle, so it's fairly easy to get, and I believe it only costed like 70 gold, so it's really not that difficult to get. You just gotta purchase it. Then again, you do have to do the whole hassle of trying to get the Truffle to move in, so I don't know if it's really that much easier. But you can see here that it's actually putting up a pretty decent fight against the Destroyer, which is about when you'll have this spear obtained. You'll probably use it to fight the mechanical bosses and then probably never again. But it does about like 60, 70 base damage, I think you'll see that on screen. But it has a pretty cool effect as well, where when you swing the spear, you can probably see it in the gameplay a bit, it'll spawn mushrooms where the spear is swung at. And those mushrooms will stay on screen for a few seconds, and they'll deal extra damage, so they're actually pretty decent, especially against bosses like the Destroyer, as you can see here. Those mushrooms are helping out quite a lot. But I'm not really sure why the Mushroom Spear isn't used that much, considering it's not too difficult to get, but the whole spears category is just never used. I never see anyone use them except for maybe the start of the game if that's your first weapon you found, but yeah, people never use spears. Next up we have the Christmas Tree Sword. This is actually a pretty solid sword, and there's kind of really a main reason why this is kind of underrated, and I'll talk about that in just a bit. But the Christmas Tree Sword is obtained from the Frost Moon event. You can get it as a drop from the Everscream, as you can see on the screen right now. That's the drop rate. So it's not too difficult to get, but I feel like most people kind of skip over these events. Maybe not most, but a lot of people do. It does some fairly decent damage as well, as you can see on screen here. That's the damage it does, and it's taken out these enemies from the Frost Moon pretty well. And the main reason why I kind of think this is underrated is because, well, they actually made a buff to this weapon. I forget what update it was, but they made a buff to this weapon. Previously, it was not as good as it is now, and most people may not even have realized that this buff. What it does now, as you see in the gameplay, when you swing the Christmas Tree Sword, it doesn't just like throw one ornament. It throws like this star above you, and it'll like drop ornaments from the sky or wherever you swung it from. So it's pretty interesting. It's got a unique kind of attack style to it. Probably this might be, depending on how you use it, could be better on events just because those Christmas tree ornaments can cover a large area. But overall, it's actually a pretty decent weapon. I feel like most people may not be getting this weapon just because it's kind of later in the game when you obtain this, and there's much easier stuff to go for, but this really is not a bad choice if you're doing the Frost Moon anyways. If you're going melee, might as well pick this thing up because it's not bad. Not as bad as most people would think. Next up on our list, we have the Ariel's Bane, and this weapon is actually pretty solid, as I say with, I'm gonna say this with every other weapon, but it actually is pretty good and fairly underrated. And I think it's really just underrated because it seems like most people don't want to even try to do the Old One's Army event because that's how it's obtained. It's fairly difficult to obtain because you have to actually defeat Betsy, and you can't even have Betsy to show up in the Old One's Army event until after you beat Golem, so this is a fairly end game or late game weapon, however you want to say it. So it's actually fairly decent to get. But if you can obtain this weapon and you want to go out of your way to do the Old One's Army, this is a great bow for any range class. And I'm testing it on the Empress of Light here in the gameplay, which works fairly well against, but I would assume that this would be great for events such as the Old One's Army, because as you can see, when you shoot a target, this is its special attack. When you shoot at a target, the arrows will like splinter off. As you can see in the gameplay, the arrows will drop down to the ground when you shoot a target in the area. So this would just be great for really any kind of event in Terraria. And it also has a bonus of dealing extra damage to aerial targets, hence the name Ariel's Bane. So that's a pretty nice added bonus, so this would be great for a lot of different bosses. Another bonus that this has is it shoots its own unique arrow, so it'll convert arrows for you into this fiery aerial arrow, whatever it's called. So it's great paired with the endless quiver that you can get, so just wooden arrows or the endless quiver. Use that because you might as well, it'll convert the arrows for you. And as you can tell, it also shoots 5 arrows, so that's another bonus, extra damage. The base damage doesn't look like too much, considering how far you get this in the game, but when you consider all these extra bonuses, such as 5 arrows, splintering arrows, extra damage to aerial targets, it's a really great bow, especially when you realize pretty much every boss in this game is a flying enemy, so you might as well pick this up. And lastly, for this video, the final weapon on our list is the landmine. And wait. Hear me out on this one. I know you might be calling me crazy, but there's a reason I put this on this list, and kind of an oversight by me. But the landmine is actually a pretty decent weapon. Not really anymore, but it was. And they made a change to this weapon, which kind of makes it useless now. Previously, this was actually like great. You would not want to miss this one out, but they made a change that I was unaware of, and you may have been unaware of this too. You can't obtain the landmine until you've defeated at least one pirate invasion and you've defeated Plantera. You may be thinking like, that's really bad. Why would you want to use landmines after you've already defeated Plantera? And you're right on that one. You really wouldn't. But previously in older updates, so if you're still on old gen consoles, listen up. You could get the landmines before defeating Plantera in pre-hard mode. Yeah, in pre-hard mode anytime. So knowing that these do 250 damage each landmine, you can see it destroying King Slime here. So if you're on old gen consoles, pick these up because they're great. Also really good for trolling your friends, blowing them up. But they deal 250 base damage. That damage can't be modified by any accessory or anything. It stays at 250, I believe. So that's kind of why landmines are underrated. Not really. They used to be underrated. Now they kind of suck because you can't get it till Plantera. But if you're on old gen consoles, yeah, use these to fight bosses. But anyways, guys, that is gonna be it for today's video. If you did enjoy, could you please like and subscribe to my channel? I would really appreciate it, as over 90% of people who do watch my videos are not subscribed. I will also leave the link to my Discord server in the description of this video if you want to go ahead and join that. But one more last thing. I said this already at the start of the video, but if you have any recommendations for this series that you think I could change or mention more about the weapons, let me know. Or if you just have other weapons that you think are underrated that I should cover, comment them down below, and I'll get to them at some point. I've already made a large list that I'm gonna cover within the past or next few videos or so I'll get to them at some point. But that is gonna be it for today's video, so goodbye.